After weeks of uncertainty, Formula One and Singapore announced that this year's Grand Prix is cancelled. The announcement has been widely expected due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Organizer Singapore GP said that it has not been able to start work on setting up the event venue because of access and construction prohibitions. These works normally start in May and cannot be completed in 3 months.
Other challenges faced by the organizer include restrictions on mass gathering and travel. Existing ticket holders will get an automatic refund within 30 business days, or they can choose to use their tickets for next year's event. Those who bought tickets through authorized ticketing partners should contact them for refunds.
Assistant Sports Editor Jonathan Wong joins us now. So John, what do you make of this? It's not surprising news, I suppose, but were the other options feasible, like delaying the race or holding it without spectators?
Hi, Olivia. Yeah, I think the option of holding it up without spectators was shot down by Singapore GP because it's a street circuit race, and you can't really. It's not feasible to run it without spectators. And also, I mean, in terms of the revenue, it's quite a lot of lost revenue if you have it without spectators. As for delaying it, I think given how tightly packed the calendar is, I mean, if you look at, they basically have to run 18 races in the next 6 months. There isn't really any realistic gap to push the Singapore race back into November or December.
John, how far along were the race preparations? And you mentioned regarding loss of revenue as well. And by cancelling it, what costs do organisers have to bear?
Well, as Singapore GP mentioned, I don't think they've started a lot of infrastructure building because of the circuit breakers. But I think STB had put out a few tenders in terms of for trackside activities. So those were, I guess, put in place because they wanted to try and hopefully, if things could happen, they needed to get these things underway. But I think in terms of lost revenue, I mean, it's hard to put an exact figure on it. But if you look at the first 11 races here, it averages out to be about $140 million in tourism receipts.
Wow.
Given how big a draw it is for tourists to come for this race.
Right, absolutely. Well, John, something you mentioned as well earlier, F1 still plans to put out 18 races by mid-December, with the Australian Grand Prix belatedly kicking off the season next month. We're looking at an incredibly packed calendar. Do you think there will be downsides, though, to pack in so many races in less than 6 months, with some probably not allowing spectators?
Yeah, I mean, the whole of the European calendar is going to be ghost races, which are basically races without spectators. So in terms of the logistics of it is just going to be insane, because you're going like week to week to week, and the stress on the drivers, on the teams, on shipment of the equipment, of the cars is going to be a massive thing. And you're hoping that everything works like clockwork, right? And if there's a outbreak in a country that they're going to in 2 weeks, then that wrecks everything. So it's going to be a really tough thing to do this year. But I think the organizers Formula One are desperate to get it done because they have a lot of obligations to their broadcast partners as well.
Yeah, certainly. Now, not a single race is done. What does this season mean then for the driver market? Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel both will be out of contract by the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame because if you think about it, I mean, Lewis will probably sign with Mercedes, but it's Vettel that is the big question mark because he hasn't gotten a seat yet for next year, and I mean, he's such crowd favorite. With Ferrari, he won I think last year as well. He was the Singapore race champion. So it's a shame, if this is his last season in Formula One, and the Singapore fans here don't get to see him because the race is cancelled. But I mean, it's extraordinary times, so unfortunately, it's a shame.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, John. We've been speaking to Jonathan Wong, Assistant Sports Editor at the Straits Times.